All right, Unit 4, Video 5. You've been waiting so long to graph tangent and cotangent. So here we go. All right, well, there are a few major differences with tangent and cotangent versus our sine and cosine graphs. For one, let's go ahead and start marking our four quadrantal angles around our unit circle and find out, this is going to be our tangent page, by the way. And then we'll do a whole nother page on cotangent. But go ahead and mark these down, and we will find our tangents at all four of those points. So once you have your unit circle labeled with the four ordered pairs, if we were to look at tangent, and tangent is defined as our y over x, or the sine over the cosine. And if that's the case, our y over x is 0 over 1, or 0. And at 0, comma 1 up here at pi over 2, we end up with undefined. Over here we have 0 over negative 1, which is the same as 0. And here we have negative 1 over 0, which is also undefined. So keeping that in mind, as we go ahead and work our way around our quadrantals, if I did 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi, and I filled in my f of x values to match those, we would have some very unexciting values to graph because we can't graph anything that's undefined. We will indirectly, and I'll show you that here. But I would have then 0, undefined, 0, undefined, and 0. So what we also can see then is maybe to complete an entire period or one cycle through all values of tangent, that we actually only have to graph a period of pi, because from 0 to pi we go from 0 to 0, therefore we're encompassing everything. But what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to go and we're going to back this up, and so we get an entire cycle very nicely graphed, and you'll see why in a moment. Is we're going to use negative pi over 2 all the way to positive pi over 2. So we're actually going to graph from negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2. Well, what that leaves us is 0 right in the middle. And in order to get other values, we're going to use negative pi over 4 and positive pi over 4. Now please make sure you understand that from negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2, that is 1 pi. It's 90 degrees on this side, it's 90 degrees on that side, that's 180 degrees, which is equal to pi, a total of 1 pi. If we were to look at our negative pi over 2, we are undefined, and our positive pi over 2, we are undefined. At 0, we know we're going to have 0. So far I know undefined, I'm not allowed to be there, and in order to graph something we're not allowed to be at, we're going to use asymptotes. Okay, so these are our asymptotes, and they are where the function is undefined. In this case, tangent is undefined at negative pi over 2 and at positive pi over 2. So what are we going to graph in between? Well, what is the tangent of pi over 4? Tangent of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2 over root 2 over 2, or positive 1. The tangent of negative pi over 4, which is in our fourth quadrant, where we know that our sine value is negative root 2 over 2 over positive root 2 over 2, or negative 1. So this is where these values come from. And that gives us a little bit more to graph. So I've got positive pi over 4 and negative pi over 4, where positive pi over 4 gives us a value of positive 1, and for the tangent, negative pi over 4 has a value of negative 1. So how do we connect these? I'm going to grab a different color so you can really see, because I've drawn quite a bit here. Is that our tangent graph will look like this. So what's important is you know that we're going to do 1 period, which is equal to pi. It's not half a period, it's actually the entire period for pi. It repeats itself every single value of pi. So we have negative pi over 2 to positive pi over 2 with 0 right in the middle. That's how we're going to graph our tangents. Maybe you might need to review this and look at this one more time before coming to class. Now we're going to work with our cotangent. Now once you understand tangent, cotangent is not as complicated, but it is different. Okay, if we were to look at all of our values once again, oops, that's 0, 1, and then negative 1, 0, and 0, negative 1, we will find that we have for tangent to be x over y, or cosine over sine, we end up with 1 over 0, or undefined, 0 over 1, or 0, negative 1 over 0, or undefined, and 0 over negative 1, or 0. So if we were to go to the standard graph here and try to do this over 2 pi, we would have 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. We'd end up with undefined 0, undefined 0, undefined. Which means that we can complete an entire cycle of this in 1 pi just the same. But we're going to go ahead and show this one from 0 to pi, with pi over 2 in the middle. So this one will not encompass using the negative side. So we're going to place our undefineds on the ends again, and our 0 right in the middle. But this time my undefined will be down the 0 line and over here at positive pi, putting the 0 point in the middle at pi over 2. So we will use pi over 4 and 3 pi over 4 as our other spots. So if we were to take the cotangent of pi over 4, and we looked at the cotangent of 3 pi over 4, the cotangent of pi over 4 is positive 1. So positive 1 is pi over 4. And if we were to look at the cotangent of 3 pi over 4, where our cosine is positive, or cosine is negative, we end up with negative 1. So it does look very similar to our tangent graph, although it is shifted, and it kind of looks like it's backwards. Well, it should look backwards since it is a reciprocal function of cotangent. So both our 1 and our negative 1 should be reciprocals, or should be reversed as they are graphed. Please look back at both of these graphs and feel comfortable with the way that they are set up and look different from each other, but yet how they are very similar to each other. It's important that we know the difference between these two graphs.